So, most of us, right, we're familiar with the story of Abraham. You know the one, where he's commanded by God to sacrifice his own son. It's a huge story of faith. But today, we're going to dig into a perspective from our source material that completely reframes this world-changing event. And it all starts by asking just one simple question.
I mean, think about it. The command itself is just shocking. A father is asked to sacrifice his son. It's the ultimate test of faith. But the real question, the one at the very heart of the source material we're looking at, the one that changes everything, is this: which son are we talking about?
And right here, this is where you see the massive divergence. In the biblical account, the son is Isaac, the father of the Israelites, but our source, pulling from the Quranic tradition, says, no, it was Ishmael, who is the father of the Arab peoples. And look, this isn't just swapping one name for another. This one change, it fundamentally shifts the entire lineage, the legacy, and the whole meaning of the sacrifice. It's a huge deal.
Okay, so to really get what happens next, we have to wrap our heads around a key idea from our source. For an apostle of God, like Abraham, a recurring vision, well, it isn't just some random dream you'd forget by morning. Nope, it's not something you sit around and interpret. It's understood as a direct, undeniable command straight from God.
And this leads to what has to be one of the most incredible conversations ever. Abraham just goes to his son and says it plainly. "O son, I see in a vision that I have to slay you." And Ishmael's response? It's just pure, astonishing faith. He says, "O father, do what you've been commanded. You will find me, God willing, among the patient ones." There's no argument, no panic, no fear, just this shared, solemn submission to God's will. It's unbelievable.
So Abraham just acts with this methodical resolve. He takes his son up to a mountain. He ties his hands and legs so he won't struggle. And then, and this part is so profoundly human, he blindfolds himself. He's afraid that if he sees his own son, his love as a father will make him hesitate, make him fail the test. And then, he passes the knife across his throat.
He thinks it's done. He believes he's fulfilled the command. But when Abraham takes off the blindfold, the scene in front of him is not at all what he expected. Ishmael is standing right there beside him, completely unharmed. And in his place, there's a ram, slain. The sacrifice was made, but it wasn't his son.
And the divine message that comes right after this moment, it changes everything. A voice from the heavens declares, "O Abraham, verily, it is an open test. We have substituted it with a great sacrifice. We have transferred it to a later generation." Wow. So this introduces two absolutely crucial ideas from this interpretation. First, this was an open test, and second, it's all pointing to some future great sacrifice.
So, okay, what in the world is an open test? Well, get this. According to the source, God never actually intended for Ishmael to be killed. The entire event was, well, it was like a performance. It was a public demonstration of absolute faith. The whole point was to serve as a powerful lesson and, this is the key part, as a prophecy for something much, much bigger that was still to come.
But why? Why do it this way? Well, this interpretation lays out a few big reasons. For one, it was to publicly show everyone Abraham's incredible devotion. It also showed Abraham his own human limits. Remember, he needed that blindfold. It was a lesson for all of us about obedience to God and a lesson for children about obedience to their parents. But the biggest reason, the most important one, was that it was all a dramatic foreshadowing of another, even greater event down the road.
Now, you might be thinking, okay, that makes sense, but why not just have this great sacrifice happen right then and there? Why wait? Well, the logic here is that back in Abraham's time, the real meaning would have been totally lost. People wouldn't have understood that a prophet's vision is a command from God. They just would have seen a man trying to do something horrific and condemned him for it. The true impact, the real value of the event, it would have been, as the source puts it, wasted.
And this brings us to the really big picture, this kind of grand theological timeline that the source lays out. See, Abraham's test wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning. It set a precedent. After that, you have the law of Moses, the teachings of Jesus. Each step was preparing humanity. But according to this view, it was all building up to one specific moment, the revelation of a universal religion through the Prophet Muhammad. That was the context where this great sacrifice could finally make sense.
So this is really what it all boils down to, the ultimate conclusion from this source material. That prophecy all the way back in Abraham's time, that promise of a great sacrifice transferred to a later generation, it was all destined to be fulfilled in the service of Islam, which is presented here as the final universal religion for all of humanity.
So we've just walked through this really powerful interpretation of a very old story. And we've seen how, just by shifting one character, Ishmael instead of Isaac, and by reframing the whole thing as a test and not a final act, you end up in a completely different theological place. It really leaves us with a fascinating question to think about, doesn't it? How can changing just one single character in a story have the power to redefine its entire meaning for millions upon millions of people all throughout history?